And so just showing up is one of the biggest factors. The thing I hear from a lot of the veterans I show up on crisis calls is, I just want someone else to care. Because even though they have people around them, like I said earlier, the biggest issues right now is for the suicides is relationships,
Yeah.
relationships and finances.
Okay.
So if they're not feeling heard or whatever in their relationship and they've spiraled, even if it's even if the other person does care, they're not going to listen to them. So they need outside sources with real relationships that will not judge them,
Yeah.
will not push them towards the negative habits, and that
Hmm.
just shows up and cares.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Adam, and I'm here with Journey Coaching. And today I am interviewing John.
Your life, your journey starts now.
And let me just hop right into it. You tell us a little bit about yourself, about your organization, and we'll just hop right into this interview.
Yeah, so my name's John Thompson. I'm the president and founder of Salute to the Fallen. Me and my wife started it about 5 years ago. And initially, it started by accident. I owned a DJ company, and I hosted a Gold Star family event to honor four of Iowa's fallen soldiers. I believe two were KIA, two were training accidents. And at the end of the event, I had a lieutenant colonel come up to me and go, "Hey, are you going to continue to do this?" And I was like, maybe. Well, within 2 weeks, I filed all the paperwork, picked the name, but I didn't have direction because at that point, I was doing it for me,
Right.
not for the right reasons. And in January of 2020, we had our first suicide. And it was a soldier in Cedar Rapids, Staff Sergeant Adam Sanders. And at that point, we started working with the family immediately. And so I saw the need that needed to be met.
Okay.
We helped the family try to raise funds. We helped with the entire funeral process, the problems they were having. His unit was just deployed right after the incident, and so there was a lot going on. And so that kind of reshaped the whole image of Salute. Is how do we prevent this? How do we make sure the families feel like the memory's living on? And how do we make the families feel like they're not being forgotten in the process?
Right.
And so that kind of changed a lot of things. And then as we've grown over the last 5 years, we started a crisis line. We opened up all the services to first responders. We go around doing speaking events. We do the funerals, fundraising, events, unit deployments, homecomings. So we're pretty much a one-stop shop for military and first responders in the state of Iowa.
That's incredible. You talk a lot about seeing the need and developing kind of the right sense of direction of the organization. What stood out to you the most about what is missing and where that hole needs to be filled, and where Salute to the Fallen has kind of filled that gap?
Yeah, so unfortunately, in our society, we have the VA.
Yeah.
They are supposed to be this great organization that, we get all of our benefits, we get health care, but there's a lot of flaws.
Okay.
Their mental health side is probably one of the lowest rated in this entire U.S., to the point where veterans are not getting access.
Yeah.
They're, 5, 6 month wait before they can get in. And, my running joke when I hear that is, I've never met someone suicidal that goes, "Hey, I think I'm going to do this, but in 6 months."
Yeah.
So kind of what we do is we've teamed up with some EMDR therapists and other specialists where all I have to do is pick up my cell phone and I can get someone in within 3 days.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's immediate access, immediate help, immediate care, and it's the connection of someone cares.
Yeah.
I sit down, I'll listen to them. So I do the crisis side. So if a veteran's
Okay.
in crisis at their house and someone calls me, I respond to their house. And so the biggest issue with the veteran populace in crisis is veterans love firearms.
Right.
They have firearms.
Right.
And when in crisis, they're normally using alcohol or narcotics. And so it becomes very, how do I de escalate this properly where they do not harm themselves or me?
Yeah.
And so the way I do it is it's very unique. I try to make them laugh, so I make inappropriate jokes about the situation or death or whatever. But I build rapport with them. And then in the process of it, I build the connection and I show them that, there is like, I'm willing to have a relationship with you. We can work through this.
Yeah.
All because I'm here tonight doesn't mean I leave and we never talk again. You're stuck with me until you tell me to go away or until, you actually seek help. Like I've had guys where I've shown up at their door, they had a gun pointed at me to now they're volunteering for the organization, they're thriving, they're doing better in their relationships, but they're here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important. And I want to get into a little bit of your backstory because it takes a lot of courage to be able to do this kind of stuff. And what has kind of motivated you to go in and be that frontline emergency contact to meet this need that is so lacking?
So, you say courageous. I call it stupidity on some of it. So I grew up rough childhood.
Okay.
My uncle was 75th. So I come from a long line of military.
Okay.
Every male in my family except a couple of my brothers served. Well, my uncle was 75th Ranger Regiment Special Operations, jumped behind enemy lines. He was the radio guy, so intel, radioing stuff back. And he took his life when I was 11. And that kind of pushed me to the enlistment process when I was 17 of I wanted to know why. And so even though the rest of my family is officers,
Yeah.
I decided that I did not want that lifestyle. I was a NCO, so I was a non-commissioned officer. I was an E5 sergeant. And I enlisted with the 508th PIR 82nd Airborne.
Okay.
So my job was front lines, kicking in doors, going after our targets, convoy security, the not so fun side of the military.
Right. Right.
And so with that, I was injured in 2012, which ended my career.
Okay.
I was non-deployable because of the injuries. And when I got home, I struggled with readapting to civilian life. I struggled with purpose. I struggled with alcohol addiction, drugs, self-worth,
Yeah.
pretty much anything you could struggle with in today's society, I tried. To, no relationship worked because I was so broken. And in between my deployments, I actually met my wife. And that's the running joke is, so we met in 2010. And so at that point, I was already wounded once. I was blown up in Iraq. My Humvee was. So I had shrapnel. Well, my granddad forced me to do OCS, which is to become an officer. And running joke was I did not know you had to have an AB average to pass. And I never went to my classes. I drank every day. I had severe depression.
Yeah.
But that's how we met is I had a party and someone invited her.
Yeah.
Well, she was already following God at that point.
Okay.
I was not.
Yeah.
And so she wouldn't give me the time of day because I was not a good person. But we became friends. And so
Yeah.
we stayed in contact all through the rest of my military career and even a few years after. And what kind of changed everything is I reached out to her one night and I didn't expect her to answer
Yeah.
because at that point we already quit talking and I actually had a foolproof plan of taking my own life. That was down in Iowa City. And I reached out to her, didn't expect a response, was starting to put in motion the plan. And then she responded. Then she showed up. That connection sign. Well, I found out years later she showed up because she prayed about it first. And that's what she felt called to do that night. And so our friendship finally became a relationship. And the joke of it is, it took 6 years of persistence. I pursued her off and on for 6 years.
Yep.
But that friendship finally grew into that. And, she was part of the church we're a part of now, which is Cedar Rapids All House Church Network. And I kept asking her to go when we first
Yeah.
started dating, and she's like, no. She didn't want me to use it as brownie points.
Right.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Well, finally I went, and something happened that day where it just reconnected. And so I started pursuing God again, because to me, he abandoned me when I was wounded. He abandoned the guys I lost. How could there be something higher out there
Yeah.
with the atrocities that I got to witness? Mm-hmm. And then I realized that no, he was there, but bad things still happen.
Yeah.
But going through all that, I attempted suicide myself 5 times.
Right.
And what I've learned from that is, not only did I live through combat in my own attempts, but God had a bigger purpose for me. And that's kind of what Salute has become, is that is my mission work,
Yeah.
to help guys with like me. And the hard part is the federal government says you cannot, as a nonprofit, push Christianity or any religion.
Right.
And so the way I do it is through relationships, connections. And as people get to know me, I can give them the steps to get to where I've gotten, because I still have issues.
Yeah.
PTSD doesn't just vanish, go away.
Exactly.
But what I've learned is, as I'm helping them, they go, well, how have you gotten to this point? Well, there's my door.
Exactly.
I can go, well, this is what truly helped me.
Yep.
Do you want to learn more? I've had guys where they're like, well, I actually used to be a Christian. I was like, yeah, that's what happened with me too. I was like, weird how that works.
Yep.
And so now we have like a military pastor that will reach out to people. And so we have found those ways. And then, I looked into Journey finally after like 2 years of learning about it. I finally read the stuff, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't push it, but it helps.
Yeah.
And so I've actually used it now on 2 soldiers, the same book that I got, and went through it. And now they're seeking further help than what just me. One of them actually just started going to church. And this guy was an atheist a year ago.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why Salute happened, is a lot of bad finally turned into good, but it took making the right relationships,
Yeah.
the right choices, getting away from the lies of the enemy. You're not
Right.
good enough, you're not worth it, seeing a monster when you look in the mirror, self-medicating with drugs, alcohol. I had to get away from that side
That makes sense. Yeah.
to heal.
Yeah, and let's narrow in on those relationships, because it seems like the key turning point in a lot of this and the emergency response is developing that essential relationship to help change the trajectory of a lot of people's lives, as it sounds like it did for you, and what you're striving to do for others. So what in relationships in the military is different than the relationships that are civilian, and what might be lacking, what, just for those who have never been deployed, what do we need to know about it?
So military relationships are kind of forced at first,
Okay.
but then it's bonds built on trauma,
Yeah.
bonds built on blood,
Yeah.
bonds built on atrocity to the world. You go through the same stuff with these guys. And so even though you can have great friendships out of the military, unless you guys are properly working through trauma, which hate to say most don't, the relationship's faulty. And then when you get out, that's the hardest thing, is when you get out, you kind of cut communication with those guys. People quit talking, they quit reaching out, or it goes from I'll reach out once a month to once a year to 5 years to never again.
Yeah.
With the civilian side, those relationships aren't forced, they're wanted.
Okay.
So for someone like me, when I first got out, the civilian side was hard because I lived on the lie of, well, you don't get it, so you don't understand, so we can't have this. We can't talk. And then I've learned that by them continuing to show up, even as I tried to push them away, that they were showing up out of their will. They
Yeah.
were showing up out of the right thing. And it's turned into, instead of reaching out to the others like me who are struggling,
Yeah.
I'm now reaching out to a group of civilians that, yeah, they don't get what I went through, but they'll show up, they'll sit, they'll listen, they'll be there, and they help navigate. And they're the ones that I could call them any time or day and they'll answer.
Yeah.
And so those relationships have developed to become true friendships. And not just that, it's accountability with them. You
Yeah.
know, with the others, I could literally call one and they're like, hey, you want to go to a bar?
Yeah.
Well, we both know what happens when we drink. We both spiral. So
Yeah.
why would we do this? And so I can go to the others and go, hey, I'm struggling with this. I can't, let's meet here. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. The other guy's going to be like, oh, you don't want to go to a bar? Well, I'm going alone.
Yeah.
And so it's finding the right connections and the right motives, because you can also find people either side where they seem genuine, but they have ulterior motives and they do push the negative habits. So
Yeah.
you have to find the right people that truly care and have that emotional side, even when it's uncomfortable. You have to sit in the uncomfortability.
Yeah. And it sounds like, there's no lack of civilian people that would also be like, hey, yeah, let's go to the bars, and that's where you're talking about people with the right motives. And so how have you cultivated kind of your presentation of relationships in these emergency scenarios to be that right source to these guys that are really in probably the biggest lows of their
Yep.
life?
Yeah, I get to deal with people that are at rock bottom.
Exactly.
They have two options: fight or flight.
Yep.
That's it. The way I build those relationships is, one, I show up,
Okay.
I listen. Favorite thing I get told when I show up is, "Oh, you don't get it," and I'm like, "Well, actually." So I tell them my side, and
Yeah.
that breaks it down quite quickly. And then I sit there, I listen. But as I'm doing that, I'm also mentally going through, questions in my head of, all right, are they showing these red flags? Is there this? And so I build next steps. And like, for instance, I had one guy, his whole family's there, his fiance and her parents, and just very toxic situation.
Yeah.
And they were like, there's no way in hell you're going to get him to go anywhere and get help. And I was like, oh, okay.
All right.
So we go sit in the garage. I mean, he drank way too much. He was spiraling. And all I did was, hey, I've been here. This is how I got out. I said, let's get you in somewhere so you can sober up, see a therapist. As soon as you're out, let's meet. Let's have coffee or something. Let's set up short-term, long-term goals. And now it's turned into, he's going to events. He's hanging out. I call him. We just talk. I check in. He calls me when he sees certain things I post, and he's like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
So that one connection that everyone thought was going to be the end has now turned into a success story and a friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting to hear that the people around him didn't think it was possible, and to not help but wonder how that might have impacted where he was as well. It's hard to say. It's hard to be supportive, and to always know the right direction to go, but to be willing to do so. And so I think a good call to action maybe here would be, if you know of somebody that's going through this, what are steps that the civilians who definitely don't understand could take if they are in fact willing to just show up?
So if you're willing to show up, even if you're a veteran, and it doesn't have to be a veteran, it could be another civilian going through mental stuff. Continue to show up even as they try to push you away, because that's the mechanism that a lot of people with mental health struggles do. Is if they can push everyone away, then they can spiral to the point of no return. So by continuing to show up, loving on them, still give them the space they need, but showing them that people do care. Reach out to them, check in on them. They may get frustrated with that, but that goes away because then they start realizing that, hey, it's not just me. I don't have to fight this mental battle alone.
Yeah.
And so just showing up is one of the biggest factors. The thing I hear from a lot of the veterans I show up on crisis calls is, I just want someone else to care. Because even though they have people around them, like I said earlier, the biggest issues right now is for the suicides is relationships and finances.
Okay.
So if they're not feeling heard or whatever in their relationship and they've spiraled, even if the other person does care, they're not going to listen to them. So they need outside sources with real relationships that will not judge them,
Yeah.
will not push them towards the negative habits, and that just shows up and cares.
When the key aspect of this emergency response is building relationships, we're connected here today because of relationships. And you mentioned utilizing Journey to some capacity or have gone through it. What parallels does Journey have with these healthy relationships that are needed? How does Journey either amplify that, or where could Journey go differently? Just open floor. What?
Right. So I think Journey does great with the aspect of people seeking appropriate relationships.
Okay.
To me, when you go through and you're going through it, it parallels with what you should be doing.
Right.
Now, the issue when you're going through it, if you're shut off, you're mentally not wanting to deal with stuff, you're going to read it, forget it, and just keep going.
Right.
The part of Journey, the part of faith, anything, is even when it's hard and uncomfortable, is to sit in it and figure out the purpose to go forward with.
Yeah.
So like I said, I used it with 2 soldiers.
Yep.
And I'm probably not as better as the people that actually do Journey all the time. But what I did is I opened the book, read the stuff with them, and then afterwards they were like, wait, I thought you said this was faith-based. I said, well, it is. They were like, well, it doesn't seem that way.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's the point.
Yeah.
It's supposed to make you seek and think and look at a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And like I said, one of those guys actually turned and started going to church, and he was atheist his entire life.
Yeah.
But by doing the Journey with him and then talking about our past experience in the military, in the struggles, he could actually see where God showed up for him. After years of blaming and saying there was no God and that it was all people's own emotions and everything else, I was able to go, look, that night I showed up, that wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone called me, how did it happen? And he was like, well, because you started Salute. And I was like, but why?
Right.
And so we went through that double-edged sword. So that's one of the biggest things, is everything I do is a double-edged sword, because I have trauma and I'm dealing with their trauma. But by helping them, I'm slowly dealing with mine. But the difference is I know when to take it back to the relationships I've built, and I go, hey, so like for instance, I'll give an example.
Yeah.
Without using names. So I've been dealing with a awkward situation where multiple members of my church know the couple.
Yeah.
where they're struggling. And so initially, 2 weeks ago, I was talking to my wife and I'm like, hey, let's invite him over and do marriage counseling. And she's like, I got to pray on it. Nothing came of it at that immediate point. Most
Right.
people would be like, well, it's not God. Well, not everything's immediate.
Yeah.
And then, a bunch of stuff happened. And so yesterday I messaged the two other members from my church and I'm like, hey, pray for us. We have the female coming over tonight.
Yeah.
We're going to pray for her, figure things out, talk with her, reconciliation, whatever. And then I was praying about it. And 2 hours after I prayed about it, I get a call from the husband.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm coming too. And I'm like, oh crap, this is going to be awkward. It was like, this changed the whole outcome of
Yeah.
what I was saying. So I called my wife and I'm like, hey, by the way, they're both coming. So I resent out the prayer and I'm like, hey, I don't know what this looks like. God's obviously working on this.
Yeah.
Pray for it. Well, with everything that took place, 98% of relationships would fail.
Yeah.
This one has not. It's part of the 2%. Instead, we gave him one of the books we have about the 5 love languages, and I gave him the journey book. So I need a few more of those. But I gave him this stuff and the resources, and then I call this morning and I say, how was the rest of the night after the conversations? Great. We're in a lot better headspace. We feel like we have what we need to work on things. And I'm like, well, me and my wife are always here. Let's do this every 2 weeks. Let's build that foundation.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing with Journey, with how I run my stuff. Even though my stuff is very chaotic and crisis, and it's the foundation of it all is proper relationships and a proper seated foundation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And it's just very inspiring to hear that, as you said, you're working through your trauma has in turn helped you be prepared to help others in theirs. And then in turn, that also is a very backwards gift of helping you continue to work through yours.
Yep.
And that is just kind of the core gift of community and these relationships. And I think that's inspiring and something that everybody should take stock in, because there are so many unwritten gifts, so many implied benefits that just you can't put a price on it. And so last thing I want to do is just give you a little bit of floor space here for your salute to the fallen organization, and anything, whether it's a call to action or something people need to know. How can we be of service to you and your organization?
Yeah, so I'm probably one of the worst presidents out there for an organization. I don't sit in an office. You're not going to find me at a computer.
Right.
I'm out doing it.
Yeah.
I've always learned you lead from the front. You don't order from the rear.
Yeah.
And so I'm always out doing it. And so what I call for action for people, I actually, follow us on Facebook, look us up online. So Facebook, Salute to the Fallen Foundation. And then you can keep track of what we're doing and where we're at. So like yesterday, I had to make a post.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with my 37th military veteran suicide this year. And I made a call to action on that.
Yeah.
Call your friends. Call your battle buddies. Call the guys you served with or are serving with. Reach out. Build those relationships and connections. The best thing people could do for us is to actually build the community relationships where this goes away. We got to end the stigma with mental health. It needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
It needs to be talked about. To me, PTSD, mental health problems, is no different than, having a medical issue where you can go to a doctor, get it fixed.
Yeah.
It's a sickness, but it can be healed from.
Yeah.
Combat trauma It's not going to go away.
Right.
I finally come to the realization of that through 9 years of my faith and all of the resources I've done. But what happens with it is you learn to cope. You learn to wake up every day going, it's a new day.
Yeah.
And here's the positives. We got to quit looking at the negatives. And as we do that, you grow and things get a lot easier. I mean, so a little bit more about me.
Yeah.
You know, 3 years ago, I still struggled with dates, smells, time of year, certain things, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, certain buddy's funeral, like the day they got killed,
Yeah.
and I still went to alcohol. But to me, I was lying to myself and the people around me of, well, I'm not in a bad spot. I'm fine. Famous quote, I'm good.
Yeah.
I wasn't. But over the last 2 years, I've been able to now, through all of the progress of relationships with the guys from church and even my wife, as ours has grown over the 9 years, I'm now able to see it first, and I'm doing what I'm telling everyone else to do. I'm reaching out.
Yeah.
We have a house church Facebook message thread.
Right.
And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, hey, I'm battling severe depression because all this is going on. I'm struggling. Pray for me.
Yeah.
But I'm hitting it before it hits because I start seeing the switch.
Yep.
And that's what we have to start doing as society is we have to see it before it's coming. You have to notice the small signs, because if you don't notice the small, it's really easy for it all of a sudden to turn from a rainstorm to an EF5 tornado.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
it's the shift of the wind. So noticing the small things and learning how to work through those will help you through the big. And the way I've done it and the way I've helped the guys that I work with is there's a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a lot of finding the good and the bad. But then it's also, like I said, and I'll say it a million times, is it's the relationships I've built over the last 9 years.
Yeah.
Or that the ones that pursued the relationship with me, where finally I was like, all right, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I would call people to do. Build better relationships, healthy ones.
Yep.
If you're struggling, reach out to someone. You know, the thing I like to try to explain to people is when you're struggling mentally, it seems like you're only affecting yourself when you make a decision like this. But like I said yesterday, I've had 37 this year. That's 37 families.
Yeah.
That's hundreds of families in Iowa, because you have all the cousins and moms, dads, sisters, nieces, brothers.
Yeah.
That's whole communities impacted.
Yeah.
And people don't get that. It's not just you. And you may go through something now, but you don't come back from that.
Yeah.
You seek help. Who knows? In 5 years, you could be running an organization and I could quit. Like, it'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But seek the help now.
Yeah.
During the small problems before it becomes too big. If you have faith, grow your faith.
Yeah.
Help your friends. Be the change in your friend group. If you don't want to get rid of your friends because they're struggling, be the light.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. So wise too. I will say it takes. I mean, I'm sure it takes a lot of courage to come up here and share your story. So we just want to thank you so much for your time and your willingness to be vulnerable with us here today. For all you guys who are watching, check out Salute to the Fallen. Check out Journey Coaching. And with that, we'll wrap.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time and make sure you like and subscribe. Visit us at journeycoaching.org and check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Start your own journey at journeycoaching.org.
Your life, your journey starts now.